Entrepreneurship wrecks our nervous system. And you're constantly making decisions. There isn't really a clear finish line. There's constant pressure with no off switch. And that's not just stressful, that's chronic nervous system dysregulation. Hey, squirrels. Welcome to AvyHD, where ADHD isn't some clinical diagnosis. It's just life. I'm Avy, your always honest tour guide through this beautiful mess. Over here, we're not about fixing yourself. We're about figuring out how to actually enjoy your life as you are. So grab a snack and let's go. Welcome back, squirrels. We are so excited to have you for another day. Let's just jump right in. Entrepreneurship is sold as mindset, grit, discipline, just push a little harder. And if that were true, most of you listening wouldn't be struggling because you're already doing all of that. So today, we're going to talk about what's actually happening in your brain, in your nervous system, and in the roles that you have that you were trained in long before you ever started a business. And I'm joined today by Judith Richey. She is founder of A Course for Transformation and works with entrepreneurs who are successful on paper but dysregulated in their bodies. Judith blends neuroscience-informed nervous system work, embodiment, and deep pattern recognition, especially around family dynamics, to help people stop white-knuckling their lives and start operating from capacity instead of stress. Thank you so much for being here, Judith.
Oh, thank you. Gosh, I'm going to have to re-listen and grab that introduction because that was perfect. That's exactly what I do.
Oh, great. Let me send it to you. We will email it over.
I think that's going to go on my website.
Awesome. I love that. So let's just jump right in with our first question. Why do so many high-performing entrepreneurs and high-performing people feel like they're failing even when objectively maybe things are working out for them?
Gosh, that is such a great question. And it all has to do with whose calling are you following? And so I'm just going to jump into the woo first, and then we'll back into the neuroscience, okay? We're all here for a specific reason. And when we're little, people don't ever ask you, who are you? They ask you, what do you want to be? So from the very, very earliest of ages, we are conditioned into the what and the how, not the who of our being. So what happens is we are taught that we find our value and worth when we achieve, when we accomplish, when we meet objectives, when we meet our goals, and that just translates into our schoolwork. It goes into our university or our work life, and then into our careers. So we don't feel like we're a complete person without hitting all those objectives and those demands that are placed on us, those goals that we have to create for ourselves. It's a very pressure-filled way to live. And so we, as entrepreneurs, if we leave corporate or if we just choose to be an entrepreneur, we carry that with us. And instead of settling into what is it that our soul came here to accomplish, we turn it into that human, what is our humanness here to accomplish?
Wow, I love that so much because, entrepreneurship wrecks our nervous system. You're constantly making decisions. There isn't really a clear finish line. There's constant pressure with no off switch. And that's not just stressful, that's chronic nervous system dysregulation. When you pair that with what you just said about not necessarily operating from yourself, how does that show up for people and what happens in the brain?
Oh, well, it's the chronic insomnia, the migraines, the body pain, failed relationships, the chasing the next thing, shiny object syndrome, all of the things, right? And then it's oh, if I just go to this seminar, if I just read this book, if I just follow this influencer, if I just have the right mindset, if I'm just doing the right habits, it's all going to fall into place. And I know that has to resonate with for the folks that are listening to this because we've all done it before, right? I wanted to gag this weekend because a very popular influencer was featured on CBS Sunday Morning, and her initials are MR, and that's all I'm going to say. And, I was just like, that's more of that toxic positivity mindset crap that doesn't do anything to regulate our nervous system. If anything, it causes more nervous system dysregulation. And it's so unfortunate because many, many entrepreneurs get into, oh, I've got to be in the 5 a.m. I've got to get up. I've got to take the cold shower. I've got to go work out. I've got to do this many reps and I've got to do this many plank things. And if I don't do my Pilates, I'm going to fail. And, if I gain an ounce, so it's horrible because, and we get into this thing about how we show up in the world instead of settling into what's my message? What am I here to convey? What am I here to contribute to the collective as part of my entrepreneurial journey? And there's such a difference in the energy, the freneticism that we can fall into versus the calm growth that we can enjoy when we operate that way.
Wow. As you were talking, my brain was kind of picking apart what you were saying. And it's so interesting that the challenges that show up, the failed relationships, the insomnia, the body pain, the migraines, those are things that we consider to be external, right? Like external to myself. I have a migraine. I probably didn't drink enough water, or, insomnia. There's something outside of me that's happening. My failed relationships, well, I just have a bad picker. It's the men, it's not me. And even the solutions that you speak about, the cold showers, the exercise, the reps, the habits, the waking up at 4 a.m., all of those are physical responses to physical ailments. And what you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, is none of this is physical at all.
It is not physical at all. Those are the manifestations of the nervous system dysregulation that we see. And this is a great time to talk to you about the collapse cycle. And this is something that high achieving people will really recognize. It's achieve, collapse, recover, achieve, collapse, recover, achieve, collapse, recover. It's something we do over and over and over again. And it's interesting we're having this conversation kind of at the beginning of the year, the newest year. Chinese New Year doesn't happen until February 17th, so I still consider myself in that New Year bubble time. Because one of the very first things that happens in the New Year is, oh my God, what are your resolutions? What are your goals for this year? What are you going to do? A long time ago, I determined I was not making resolutions and I wasn't going to be a goal setter like that, because that sets up that collapse cycle. When we are constantly striving for production, that's what sets up that collapse. Because if we aren't producing, if we aren't, winning the sale, making the connection, gaining followers, all of the things, well, then we're like, well, what's wrong with us that we're not doing it? There must be something wrong with me. And then that leads to the collapse. And then we go into recovery mode, right? And then we give ourselves just a little bit enough time to start feeling better. Maybe we get sick. Maybe we have bronchitis. Maybe we go to bed for a weekend, and I'm just going to snuggle and watch Netflix and I'm just going to eat popcorn and be all snuggly and recover. And then by Monday morning, we feel good again. But long term, those are not the answers for us.
Would you say that even capable people feel less capable the longer they're in that cycle?
Oh, absolutely.
Or at it?
No, it
Mm.
gets worse. It absolutely gets worse until you come into a complete and total burnout space. And you have options when you hit burnout. So what does burnout look like? I'll tell you my story real quick about burnout. I was raised with a mother who I didn't feel like connected with me emotionally. And her story is her story, and so I'm not going to talk about it from her perspective. But from my perspective, I felt like the only time I was loved was when I was achieving. So that set up an achievement cycle for me. And so that came in my early years through winning music contest, and then grades, and then degrees and accomplishments and awards, as I went on into my career. And when I didn't have those things, I didn't feel validated. And so it was this constant pressure that I put upon myself to receive my validation through achievement, to find my value and worth through achievement, until it didn't work anymore. And I was a six-figure financial advisor who won all the trips and all the awards and was making all the money, got, recognized. And I was so completely miserable. I was just in the tank, you know. And one day I finally went, this is insanity. I cannot continue to keep living like this. I am so desperately unhappy in my life, in my relationships, my marriage, with what I'm doing with my kids. And I just said, stop the train, I'm getting off. And so I resigned as a financial advisor. I took a break in my marriage and I just sat on the couch for 6 months. And I did some very, very deep soul searching and healing. And that led me to the work that I do now because there was no training when I was growing up as a young woman into my adult life on how to manage nervous system regulation so that I didn't stay in this cycle. And in the spiritual world, we call it the dark night of the soul experience. In the physical world, we call it a nervous breakdown. And it's a very, very real thing. And it happens more frequently and sooner in today's world with all the demands that we have than it did even when I was going through it.
Wow. There's so many pieces that I want to pick up on. I was just as a sidebar, how cool is it to have the privilege to be able to do the 6 months of soul searching? When I talk about privilege being a stepping stone, not everyone has the time, resources, intelligence, bandwidth, capacity to do that type of deep, but there are some people in the world who really give themselves up and give their time up to become excellent at what they're meant to teach. And we have such a privilege as a world that has free access to information to have access to people who have had the privilege of being able to go through those processes and be able to teach other people. I don't know if that made sense, but
It makes total sense. And it's really fascinating because I've never assigned the word privilege to what I went through because at the time it didn't feel like privilege. At the time, it felt like shit. No. But when I think about it, as I mentioned, I was a multiple six-figure earner, and so what I was able to do is I was able to take a leave of absence from my position as a financial advisor. Well, I got still paid very, very handsomely for a year, and so that was a privileged position. But you're right, there are a lot of people who don't have that privilege. So what do they do instead becomes the question. How do they manage keeping all the plates spinning while they're also trying desperately to find the answers to what they feel is not quite working for them in their lives?
yeah. So let's talk about this. All sounds really nice. And we talk about things like mindfulness. We talk about self care. We talk about being present. And a lot of us hear mindfulness and we think like meditation pillows and deep breathing and something that's nice, but kind of optional. That's not what you're talking about. So, from a nervous system perspective, what are you talking about?
So it's a yes and okay. What I did was I read the books, I looked at the things, and I couldn't find what my soul needed. And so I created what my soul needed, which was basically do it yourself, small bites of being able to sit down for 5 to 10 minutes and deep dive and get introspective and then get up and go do the laundry and make dinner for my kids. And when I was going through my dark night of the soul experience, there was nothing out there. Now, mind you, this was 20 years ago, okay? And believe it or not, the personal development world was nothing like it is today. The only people who were popular were Dr. Phil, Oprah, Deepak, and Tony Robbins. And if you didn't fall into one of those categories, you were just SOL.
That's a
And I
quadruple
didn't fall
yikes. Well, yikes, those four.
And I didn't fall into those categories. None of that spoke to what I was looking for. And so now that I have had the opportunity to go through my trainings, get my certifications, be a practitioner for the last 15 years, I have been able to look at it and go, well, what did I need at that moment? Oh, this is what I needed: a 10-minute video that I could watch at 2 o'clock in the morning if I was not sleeping. I needed a worksheet that I could go through that asked the right questions. I needed to be able to dive into myself because we have the answers. We just don't have the questions to pull the answers out. And so when we have the opportunity to do those deep dives and learn that, oh, if you do 3 box breathings, and a box breathing is in for 4, hold for 6, out for 8. If you do 3 of those, guess what? That's automatic nervous system regulation. When somebody hears deep breathing, they go, oh my God, I got to sit on the floor and it's going to take me 30 minutes and I don't have that amount of time. No, you can just sit at your desk in your office and you can deep breathe 3 times and your nervous system would be regulated. Or you can learn that humming regulates your vagus nerve. And so you can hum for 15 seconds or 20 seconds and regulate your vagus nerve, which helps regulate your nervous system. So it's those little tiny things that we can put into our daily rhythm when we have the resources and the toolbox to dig into. That's what helps.
This is a tiny bit of a sidebar, but I think that we can learn a lot about physical regulation and nervous system regulation from low verbal autistic children.
Yes.
You're great regulators in their bodies. And I'm a rocker and a hummer, but not in the big world. I don't just walk around rocking and humming because I don't want to embarrass myself.
Right.
It's a tiny detour, but can we talk about for a hot second about why that's dumb and I should rock and hum if I need to?
Well, I think you're following your instincts on, I'm going to do this where it feels safe to me. Okay. Safety is a huge thing, right? When our nervous system doesn't feel safe, we go into fight, flight, or freeze. We go in that autonomic response, and that shuts us down in nanoseconds. So the fact that you have tapped into, oh, this is something I can do when I feel safe is amazing. And I want to say to other people who use this, I have a son, my oldest son, he's a rocker because when he was little, he was the third kid. He was the third kid born in, let's see, he was 1, 3, no, yeah, 1, 3, and 4. Okay, so when he was a baby, his little sister was 2. He was born on his sister's second birthday. Okay, so I had a newborn, a 2-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
Ouch.
He spent a lot of time in the swing.
Yeah.
He learned regulation by swinging. So as a 38-year-old adult, he rocks. That makes him feel safe. That makes him feel cocooned and comforted. Nothing wrong with that. Okay. Now, there are things that we can do in public or in a public space that will help comfort us also. Some of those are tapping. It could be that you just sit and tap on your collarbone very inconspicuously. It could be that you sit and tap on the side of your hand inconspicuously. Those are actually mudras. You know about mudras?
I don't really, but this is something that I do if I can't do anything else.
Yes, I do that too. And you'll see people shaking their foot. That's a type of self-regulation, okay? So there are things that we can learn about that help us in that safety space for our nervous system when we're in those big public spaces.
Is it safe to say that learning those regulation techniques changes how an entrepreneur responds to pressure in their business and in their personal life?
Oh, 100%. And, I'm a big meditator. I'm a meditation master. I write meditations. I teach it. I use it a lot for myself personally. Some people don't love meditation. They don't get it right. I'm not a human design expert, but I was just recently, I had a human design expert come in and talk in my membership, and she and I have become very good friends. And we were talking about the difference between generators and yes, projectors. Thank you. Okay, so she explained it like this. Generators are the people who are going to be the actors. They're going to be the ones who make the costumes. So you have emotional generation and manifesting generators. They're the doers. Okay. Projectors are the people who are going to sit in the audience and clap for you and watch the show. Okay. So meditation doesn't work for 25% of the population or more. So when you understand your design, when you understand how you're put together to be able to use the different tools that are out there, you can find tools that work for you more efficiently. So because I'm a manifesting generator, I only journal when I'm really, really needing to get to the bottom of something. Most of the time, otherwise, I'm good. My intuition is flying. I'm using my abilities, my powers that I have to be able to move through life. But if there's something I just can't get to, I will sit down and journal through it. Some people hate meditation, but journaling works for them. Okay. So that's where it's helpful to know about yourself, to have that awareness about yourself, instead of just listening to all the noise out there that says you have to do this or you have to do that.
Because restoring your regulation really brings back your choice. Now I can step back, take a look at what is going on and where my choices are and make the choice that I want.
Exactly. You know how when we talk about children and we talk about different learning styles, and there's some kids who are verbal, some kids who are auditory, some kids who are oral, and it's the same thing when it comes to nervous system regulation. There are different techniques out there that help you, and that's why it's good for you to have exposure to all of them so that you can try them out and see which ones work the best for you. Some people love being out in nature. That's the best nervous system regulation for them. And I have people who tell me, I don't meditate, I don't journal, I go take a walk. I go get
Mhm.
in my kayak. I, go out and do forest bathing. Great. Those are all wonderful things, and if that's what works for you, go do that.
I love that because there's so many things that we should be doing. Like I should be a journaler and I love to journal, but I so resonated with what you just said. By the time I'm journaling, I'm already there. Right. So then I feel like I need to write things down for posterity or so that I can go back or read it again or something. But I've processed already. My hand is working much slower than my brain is working. So unless I really need to, then I don't write things down. But when I do need to, I grab a whiteboard, I write it down. It takes 2 seconds. That's why I like a whiteboard because I can move things around. I can move quick as opposed to kind of really journaling through something. But the shouldness stops us. Oh, I have to see this through until the end. Otherwise, I'm not journaling properly or something.
That's it. And I want to talk about that last statement too. This is what I call the toxic part of personal development. So much personal development says you should be doing this, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. And then what do we feel like again when we're not doing those things? Well, we
Yeah.
feel like a failure.
Mm.
We lose our value and worth. We think, oh man, I'm making so many strides. I'm really getting some understanding. There's some awareness coming. I've got breakthroughs happening. Oh, but I'm not doing that. So what's wrong with me? Am I broken? Do I need to be fixed? And so what I tell people is stop shooting all over yourself. There are no shoulds. Yeah.
Yeah. And it can be wild, like you just described. I had told myself, or I had committed to trying to journal at a particular time every day, 5 minutes of free writing. And more often than not, I didn't want to. And that not wanting to me felt like within myself, as opposed to, no, you're good today. You don't necessarily need it. You're trying to shove yourself into a very tiny container when the world is big and our options are plenty.
Exactly. I love you saying that because I don't sit down and meditate every day. I do a lot. I just love meditating. However, there are other times during my day when I'm doing something that is extremely meditative. And one of the things that I do is I paint. And so
Mhm.
painting for me has become a very meditative time. I just concentrate on my painting. If thoughts come, they just go through. I find I'm so relaxed. I find clarity, creativity flows, ideas come to me through that. Well, am I not meditating? No, I am. It just looks different, right? There's a popular program, I'm not gonna name it, but I'm gonna describe it, and it's, you work through this book, and you're supposed to have 3 morning pages a day that you write, every day, morning pages, and the book tells you what you're supposed to be writing about. So, I have muscle tested over and over if I'm supposed to do this thing, and it's a resounding no every time, and I'm like, "Okay, no issues. I'm so glad you found something that works for you."
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go back to I've mentioned this a couple of times. It's having enough awareness and knowledge of the different resources and tools that are out there for us so that we can use them when it's the right time for us.
And that's, I think, what people get frustrated about when they talk about gatekeeping. The way that we present solutions, I think, on today's internet is I found the thing that's going to fix you, as opposed to here is an offering of something I discovered that works for me.
Yeah, I
Perhaps
hate
it
that.
works for you as well.
And I hate that fix you thing because one of my deepest beliefs is you are not broken and you do not need to be fixed, period. You have opportunities to learn what works the best for you. When do we get to that point? When things aren't working anymore.
Yeah.
If you look at highly successful entrepreneurs, every one of them will tell you that they have found routines and methodologies that help them stay in that space. And I want to mention that high achieving doesn't mean you have to earn $100,000 a year. High achieving doesn't mean you have to travel all over the world from conference to conference. High achieving could just mean, oh, I'm making an extra $1,000 a month for my family. Or, oh, while the kids are in school, I'm able to go do this and build deep connections, and I'm able to paint, or I can throw pots, or I can do whatever it is. I can go horseback riding. High achieving is being able to live in your system with that peace, with that serenity, with that regulation, and not feel that stress all the time.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, I was thinking as you were talking just now about kind of the hustle culture that we have on the internet.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of this advice comes from younger people who start their businesses very young. In my world, the people who are starting businesses have families, they have responsibilities outside of themselves. Their plate is just a lot fuller than possibly a 21-year-old or a 23-year-old who hit their first million and is grinding all the time because they have the capacity, the youth, and the serotonin, I guess, to stay up all night and grind and work on this thing. And I think that that's a part that business owners who are starting later, and I'm using air quotes for those of you who can't see me, later in life, in your 30s or later, maybe when you're more established in your family, you're not starting your business as a blank slate. You brought your family system in with you. So, how does that work? And where are the conflicts that people need to look out for? And part two of that, I guess, is how does the toxicity of the culture of a very financially successful younger person giving advice to people who are possibly older and in completely different family situations, how does that harm the way we approach ourselves?
I'm going to answer the second part first, and then I'm going to talk about family systems. That goes back to that toxic positivity, that should mentality. Well, you should do it this way, you should do it that way. I am 66 years old. I've been an entrepreneur for decades. I've had my own business for the last 14 years. I might enjoy watching something that a 21-year-old says because I might enjoy their energy, but I'm going to tell you, they don't have a whole lot to offer me in terms of wisdom and life lived. Okay. And I'm trying not to be snotty about that, but it's just the truth. I have a whole lot more life than they have, and I have a different level of understanding and wisdom than they do. As we say down here in the South, bless their hearts. Bless their hearts. There are folks that are going to be influenced by them who are going to listen to them, and there will be some nuggets in there. Okay. They're being successful because they do have some nuggets. Okay. But there's a lot of other people out there. I mean, so I started this business in my 50s after I went through my dark night of the soul experience because I realized that there were other women out there just like me who had gone through a divorce, who had horrible custody stuff that had gone, who was in a second marriage that was working and not working, who was struggling to try to find their way in their career world and not talking about any of it and waking up every day feeling like they had completely failed at life because they weren't what, and remember, we used to have magazines, those things, those glossy things that we would flip through.
It had words on a page, picture
Yeah, the
sometimes.
picture, beautiful women, all the things, because they weren't living up to what the magazines and the TV shows and the commercials were portraying was a successful life. Their life didn't look anything like that, and they didn't talk about it. And so women ran around thinking, there's something wrong with me. I'm not doing this right. Why is everybody else successful and I'm not? Why does everybody else have a perfect marriage and mine is, crap? Why is my life so destroyed but my neighbor's life looks so fantastic. And so one of the things I really believe is that women can choose. I feel like I have an obligation. Women can choose to talk about this kind of stuff because it's important that we know not everybody's life is perfect. And I guarantee you, no one's life is perfect. No one's. So the more we talk about this, the more we take away the stigmas. I had a family friend tell me the other day that I shouldn't tell my story. I shouldn't be so open about what I've gone through because as a professional, it degrades my credibility.
People tell me
And
that every week.
I could not disagree more strongly with that statement because what it actually does is it builds credibility to know that people have gone through things. Okay, so family stuff. Every one of us has some kind of story, some kind of identity, some type of belief or multiple beliefs that we have created about ourselves based on the family structure that we were raised in. And that could be because we had an alcoholic father, or it could be because we had an emotionally absent mother. It could be because we saw our parents fighting. It could be because we had someone who abused us in some sort of way. And that can be all the ways, physically, emotionally, abused, sexually. I've worked with clients whose parents wanted them to be star athletes, and the pressure that was put on them was abusive. Okay. And so that affected them in their entrepreneurial journey. And when we can get to what that is, that gives us an opportunity to heal. And I want to be very clear here. We're not erasing the event. We are not pretending it didn't happen. But with every one of these things that happens, it creates energy that we carry. And that energy lives within us and lives within our nervous system, within our emotional system, and within our physical system. So what I do is I help us clear the emotional residue, the physical residue, the energetic residue of the effects of what you went through so that you're not carrying around those belief systems anymore. Popular culture calls it the saboteur, the inner critic, the limiting beliefs. Those are all words that we've put on them. But what it is that energy that we're still carrying around about ourselves. Yesterday, I did some work with a client, and while she was clearing something, I literally felt it come out of her chest. I felt the energy leaving her chest. And I asked her, "You felt it in your chest, right?" She goes, "Yes." It was just like a weight being pulled off of me. And we carry that stuff around. And so when we go to reach for whatever it is that we desire, whether that's the next level in our business, whether it's some type of intimacy that we're looking for, relationship building connection, when we reach for that, what happens is our nervous system says, "Oh, when you've done that before, it hadn't been safe because you were abused, you were bullied, this bad thing happened to you, this bad thing happened to you." And our default mode network in our brain kicks in. And what that does is it throws us into the old patterns of behavior. And so even though we desire this thing and we're reaching for it, it prevents us from getting the very thing that we desire.
Like when you go home to your parents' house and you act like a brat?
Exactly.
Mm.
I used to go out. I would go out in the evenings to a networking meeting or something like that. And I'm in my 50s, right? Okay, this was, last decade. And I come and I'd feel like a teenager sneaking into the house. I'm a grown woman with adult children. Why do I feel like a teenager sneaking into the house, coming home after dark?
It's so funny. It's like the energy that is left it's the difference between a memory and a trauma. The difference between memory and trauma is just the energy that's attached to the memory.
That's it.
Whereas if I can think about it and I don't feel it, I'm good. That's what we want. Unless I'm dissociated and there's other reasons I'm not feeling it. But
Right.
assuming that we've processed through and out. And that energy is energy that's collected from micro interactions throughout our entire life, specifically in our childhoods, of course. And it becomes this collection of other people's voices, again, about what we should be doing. The wildest part is that we hold on to this as a source of truth when the people who shit it all over us were shitting all over themselves based on even more nothing than what we have now.
Exactly. And I want to hit 2 points on what you just said. Generational and familial patterns come down to us through a science called epigenetics has discovered how we carry all of that genetically, literally in our DNA. And there are ways to resolve that for ourselves. The other part of that is when we have these beliefs about ourselves, whether they're negative or positive, it works both ways. We seek out people and situations to reaffirm to us that the thing we believe about ourselves is true. And this is why women who are in abusive relationships will not leave them, because they do not believe themselves to be worthy of having anything in their life except that abuse. And so many people go, well, he beats her. Why doesn't she leave him? Because she believes that that's what she deserves because that's what she was raised with, or that's what she created about herself. And I'm using a very extreme example of that, but we do that all the time, no matter what the belief is about ourselves.
And the positive can be debilitating as well. In my
Yes.
family, we genuinely believe that we are among the most intelligent people. Genuinely. And maybe that's true. Maybe it's not true. I don't know. I'm pretty smart. In order for me to believe that I am among the most intelligent, what that necessitates is surrounding myself by people who are less intelligent.
Correct.
And that's limiting,
Yes,
even though it's a positive belief about myself.
that's correct.
Yeah.
And
So, yeah.
to just take it one step further and get a little political right now, we're seeing a huge manifestation of this in our culture here in the United States with the patriarchy and old white men. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Bye bye, patriarchy.
Right.
We're here for the ride, definitely. Because when you have beliefs about yourself that you are superior, then you're going to put yourself in circumstances to believe that you are superior constantly. Whether you have to manufacture narratives to make that happen or only put yourself in spaces where you make that happen. So for someone like myself, I'm trying to work with people who can appreciate my intelligence and can benefit from it. If I surround myself with people who cannot, I'm doing myself a disservice, I'm doing them a disservice, I'm not putting my gift out into the world, nobody gets to benefit from it, and I might feel smart, but I don't feel financially stable
Or
I
fulfilled.
or fulfilled or moving forward, or
Right.
you're just kinda stuck because you stuck yourself there.
That's right.
Wow,
It's fascinating, isn't it?
100%. So, we spoke about growth culture a little bit and how do more, optimize harder, become better somehow. I mean, it's ridiculous advice because the model not only ignores capacity, it ignores personalization
Yes.
completely, and it, of course, fails neurodivergent and high sensitivity entrepreneurs.
Yes.
What does growth look like when it's capacity based and not discipline based?
Healing. And I
Mm,
keep using that word, right? So I've really looked at this, and what I've discovered is there's a 4-step process. What does growth look like? First thing is it's awareness. So many of us are so caught up in the doing that we don't take time to get introspective, and that's important. That's why whatever mindfulness practice you choose to use is important for yourself. If something falls apart, the question is not what did they do, but what was my part in this? What is it that I have to learn from this? What's the lesson in it for me? So the awareness is very important. And breakthrough is the next step. Many people stop at breakthrough because they have the light bulb, they have the aha moment, and they think they've gotten there, right? So they stop. And then that's half of the battle because they're not moving forward. And then transformation, that's a pretty loaded word. I'll use the word transformation, but the way I describe it is moving from that aha moment through the healing that's going to rid you of that energetic residue that you're carrying around that allows your nervous system show up differently the next time you're in one of those familiar patterns. That's really what transformation is. You don't fall back into the default, you move into a different space. You start repatterning when you're in familiar situations. And so that shifts for you. And then embodying integration. I keep talking about have that toolbox of resources so that when something does come up, you have something to reach for to help you move through the process. So that's what it looks like for those high functioning entrepreneurs to be able to continue to build capacity for themselves because the more you reprogram, the greater your capacity.
Wow. And as you're reprogramming and that's shifting for you, again, it expands your choice. It expands the way that you see yourself entirely. And you start seeing yourself as a person who is capable of adapting. And if I'm
Absolutely.
capable of adapting, then I'm not broken.
That's correct. Yeah.
What does that shift mean for the people that you see? And what is the kind of before and after of their lives, if I could be as silly as that?
Well, I mean, just to put it on a very base level, but it might mean increasing their income. It might mean being able to take days off. It might mean hiring an assistant and handing part of what they do off to an assistant. That was something that was extremely freeing for me when I finally found the right virtual assistant and worked out a rhythm with her of her being able to handle things that were not my zone of genius that I was killing myself doing. I was unhappy. I didn't like those aspects of my business.
Yes.
And now I stay in my creative space and my space of being able to help people where they need be met, not scheduling emails. So it's different for each one of us, but it really comes down to being able to stay in our zone of genius.
Absolutely. And getting rid of the rest in a safe, supported way.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if somebody listening to us today feels like they are just barely holding it together, what is the one reframe or practice that they can walk away with today?
Ooh, that's a big question. One reframe, one practice. Get quiet. That's it. Get quiet. We don't allow ourselves that silent space. We stay busy, frenetic, plugged in, on the screens, in conversation. Quiet is something that we're scared of because we're afraid of what might come through. But it's those quiet moments that give us the juiciest, the most meaty things for us to start looking at.
Don't be afraid of your quiet because you're not broken in the first place. So whatever comes out is going to be fine.
And when you have someone like me to help you sift through it, um, and there's lots of me's out there. I'm one option, okay? But when you have someone like me to help you sift through it, then it becomes less scary.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you so much, Judith.
You for this opportunity. Thank
This is incredible. And to our listeners, you are not lazy and you're not failing. You are responding naturally, exactly as a nervous system under pressure is designed to respond. So the goal isn't to push harder, it's to build supportive systems internally and externally that can actually hold you, and finding the help and support by people who have been there, walk the path for you, right? They can teach you a little bit of something. And even if you just take a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, please, please seek out diverse sources of information so that you're not only getting fed from one angle. So, Judith, where can we find you?
The easiest place to find me is on my website. That's Judith Richey, RICHEY.com. I am over on Substack now. It's the Richey Method. Just go to Substack and look for that. I've got a membership called the Transforming Force, which is everything I needed, and I don't use that word very often, but that I needed when I was going through my dark night of the soul experience, but couldn't find. So I have created that for other women who are looking for that safe place to come in and do DIY personal development that's not toxic, but very nervous system regulating, very, very safe, and very loving.
Thank you so much, Judith.
Thank
Squirrels,
you.
sustainable leadership does not come from forcing yourself. It comes from transformation, safety, capacity, support, and you were never broken in the first place. See you next week. Bye, squirrels.